CareStack, I started CareStack back in 2015 to solve problems for the US healthcare segment. Mm-hmm. If you were to describe CareStack, we are an end-to-end digital health platform with a mission to integrate oral healthcare to medical care and into chronic disease management, right? So most people in India recognize us for having built a vertical SaaS platform for dentistry, but that's just one part of our journey. The larger goal or the company's mission is to improve health delivery, outcome, and cost by integrating oral health management to medical care and chronic disease management. That's the journey we are on. The mission that we are on, we kind of have a strategy around it. So that translates to the way we think about how we march towards that mission, right? So the company's strategy to accomplish technology as our driver and build one health platform, digital health platform, which starts with making the practices efficient and create like state-of-the-smart practices, dental practices, and then go on to improve the convenience, accessibility, and transparency for the patients, and then build a set of solutions for reducing the total cost of care from an insurance company's perspective. So that's what we did. CareStack was started in 2015 between myself and an orthodontist in Central Florida by the name of Mark Husak. It took us almost 3.5 years to roll the first version of the platform out. And then, so we have been selling as a commercially viable product since the beginning of 2018. And we serve just North America, that's about it. And we serve 1,000 offices today, split between pretty much, distributed across the length and breadth of US. We are a team of 460 people with 400 people here in Trivandrum and Cochin. So we are a complete Malu company. And we have roughly 60 people in US who are split between our offices in Florida and Minnesota. We have raised over $60 million of capital from tier one venture funds and also from very large strategic enterprises in the health segment in US. So that's our journey in a nutshell.
Okay. Actually, I did read up a little bit about you, and I was like, I'm very interested in finding out how you met your co-founder, who's in the US and who happens to be in this space.
Yeah, so prior to starting CareStack in 2015, in 2010, I started a consulting outfit with myself and a team of 2 people in US. It was not even a company, it was just a limited liability corporation that allowed us to get the contracts so that we can start booking the hours, right, for the consulting work we do. And what we used to do was we did user experience design and requirements management, or what you call as product management, right? That's the first business that I ever ran. It was a complete service business, small team of 6 people, 3 people in US, and then 3 people here in India. By the merit of starting that company, we started working with healthcare customers and financial service customers. And the kind of services that we provided was to augment their product engineering teams to requirements analysis and user experience design and software prototyping. And the prototypes that we created were used for a variety of needs, all the way from aligning multiple stakeholders who are involved in the process of creation to get a visualization of what the end state of their ideas look like, to using these prototypes as an artifact for reducing the amount of rework and waste that typically happens in a software engineering cycle, to using prototypes for user testing and things like that, right? So that's the very first business that we built. That was the essence of that business. And I was hugely working with healthcare customers. So during that journey, I started working with customers across care management, insurance management, clinical trials, pharma, med devices, pretty much every segment that comes and fits in as part of a healthcare ecosystem. One of the customers in 2013 was a chronic disease management platform, which wanted to go and build an end-to-end digital health platform for solving the pain points related to management of a disease called as obstructive sleep apnea. So the disease is all about, people having problem breathing while they sleep because of a constriction in the airway, and then high incidence on nighttime heart attacks. 93% are people who are not diagnosed for OSA, or what you call as sleep apnea, right? So I got to be part of that platform. The interesting, the interesting thing about the whole journey was the treatment protocol for sleep apnea management was to be administered by the dentist, right? So the dentist uses an oral appliance that shifts the jaw down, that allows the entry of oxygen into the airway, right? That's kind of how I got introduced to a dental office. So in essence, in 2013 and 14, for 2 years, I spent time inside a dental office, working all the way from front to back, as part of building the systems to incorporate sleep apnea management into the management of a dental office, right? I worked in the scheduling division. I worked with clinical folks, with back-end people who do insurance billing and patient collections, with marketing coordinators who do digital marketing and new patient growth, office managers and practice owners who are involved in managing the business as a whole. So 2 years inside dental. And what we figured out was dental in itself was hugely fragmented, and multiple, software solutions that an office uses for managing the operations on a daily basis. They rely on 6 different software systems. There is usually an antiquated client server practice management system, which is bolted on to a patient relationship management system. It's again bolted to someone else supplying analytics, someone else supplying phone systems. And most of these systems do not communicate each other well. So besides adding cost to the process, it also has a hidden cost, which is the redundant data entry that staff have to do, as a result of which the administration cost and time goes up, and there is less care time for patient care. So to these systems and modernize these offices on a single system, and then go about and make sure that the operations are running smooth on a single system, there was no way in which you could really integrate medical and dental care. That was the part of our thesis, right? So in 2015, we decided to really fix the systems in dental and use dental as a segue to hit the consumer base, so that then we can expand into other aspects of care, which are chronic disease related, or which are medical care related, right? So the practice owner who basically ran the practice, which was my first practice, where I spent 2 years, I put together this thesis for a big all-in-one oral health management platform. And then, he became the first investor when we did not have a product with $1 million. And we had like a dozen other private investors who have all had similar backgrounds, working fragmented markets, building end-to-end platforms, who knew the context of the problems that we were trying to solve for, come together and get us a seed check of $5 million to get CareStack started. Wow. So that's how we got the ball rolling.
I would say, wow, like you spent 2 years just understanding the nuances of what's happening over there. That's simply amazing. Okay, so your co-founder also happened to be your first customer, is that right? Am I getting it correct? Okay.
Yeah, so he did 2 things, right? He took the leap of faith on, and it was just 2 of us, right? No team, nothing, right? He just took faith on a PowerPoint slide, and he opened up his practice, which is kind of like a dollar practice. So on 2 sites, they do like $10 million of annual business. That's like a lot of patients, okay? And there was another unique nature to that practice. the practice was operated by the practice owner who became the co-founder, but the practice was owned by America's largest dental insurance company called as Delta. Okay. So getting that piece right gave us the bridge to later in 2017, along with the private investors. So we are invested by, and we are a key portfolio company for America's largest healthcare insurance company, right? So it did a few things. It gave us the money, it gave us the resources, it gave us the time and space to make many mistakes, and also get us strategically associated to the very top end of the value chain.
Got it. Just to understand further, so once you got the funding is when you started building the product. Is that correct? Or you?
That's correct.
Okay, and it took around 3 years to do the rollout of the first product.
Hey, Abhi, your voice is very choppy. We are not able to hear you.
Yeah, I think I lost you. You lost it there.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, it took us 3 years to roll out the first version of the product, which we rewrote 3 times subsequently, right?
Okay.
So it basically post-launch, almost like 18 months by the time we really moving the needle inside offices.
Okay. So just to understand, so you're mostly from the product side, and who handles the business? I assume it's the other co-founder, or how is it between the two of you?
So it's for all practical reasons, it's a single founder company. My co-founder Mark, he's a practicing clinician.
Okay.
Opened up his entire operations for us to play around with, right? To the extent that when we launched the product in the first practice, his revenue dropped from 10 million to 6 million by the merit of the software that was deployed, right? So we have the dubious distinction of bringing down revenue for almost a year by 40% because the end state of the features and the user experience, the configurations were all not really sophisticated enough to to make the business better. It actually worked the other way around.
Okay. That's then what made him stick around and continue, and what happened? Like, how did it still go ahead, and then finally you are at where you are?
Look, I think here's kind of how we get started, right? So there's a couple of things, right? One is, it all starts with the thought, right? So why did we pick the industry that we are in today, right? So it's a very orthogonal way to go after a problem, right? And it goes back to my consulting days, right? So when you build up software prototype and when you're able to bring people together, what you essentially do is you give clarity, right? One of the companies that I used to work for was an Israeli company by the name of Sapiens. And the prototypes that I built were used in the sales process with large Fortune 100 corporations to really sell a concept and then obtain funding for really creation of the IP. And then the IP was monetized for the industry as a whole. So prior to starting CareStack, I have been an active participant working with professionals in that space who sold concept first and then went out to build later in a vested manner, and then mature that IP out and then make it available to transform an entire industry. So I have gone through those journey along with others, which served as a fuel for the way we started CareStack, right? So, trying to get alignment and communicate end state first and then work backwards. I have been part of similar journeys way ahead before we thought of building a product, right? So, and CareStack is the first company I have built as a product company. So that's point number one. The second thing is,
I think we lost you again.
lies at a good realization of where did you guys lose me? I'm
the
sorry, my internet
second
is a little
point. After the second point.
See, the second point is why dental, right? So it kind of, building a consulting company and running that company for a few years gave a good understanding of what our strengths were, right? So we are not product guys. We have not never built a product before. The team is nascent. I'm from Kerala. I'm very rooted to this place. I have so many limitations, culturally, that makes me a good fit in other parts of the world, right? So that's on the personal side. Dental offered me all those unique benefits. It's a very, very antiquated space, right? Uh, the space is dominated by very large distribution businesses who try to distribute a client server system along with an X-ray to the office. You do not have smart people basically working in that space. It's very orthogonal to a Silicon Valley way of thinking, right? So you get a huge luxury of time to make mistakes, and it's a space which where innovation literally happens once every 5-6 years. Right? That's the space that we are in, right? So, and as long as you can methodically get the functional requirements correct, and then modernize what's existing today, you have a good shot at basically entering into the market, right? So why dental was picked is, this very specific reason around its orthogonality to mainstream thinking, and you get the luxury of time to make mistakes, right? You don't really need a whole bunch of smart people to really build a business in that space. So that's the second bit around how we pick the space, right? Then what came to the whole process is the intent and the confidence, right? So intent wise, having worked in a practice for like 2 years, you're exposed to the pain that your end users go through, right? And I come from product design and user experience design. So the empathy quotient is high, having worked in frontline roles, right? So, and not only do you hear your users say the feedback, you're able to also relate to things that they do not say, right? Or things that are largely unfelt, right? You can read between the lines on all those areas where they get stuck. And then there is absolutely no help from these larger companies to make any difference to their life, right? So 2 years of being part of the torturous and feeling the pain that people who are doing frontline jobs are going through, that gave me the intent. And not knowing that building a health tech product is actually complex, and having that high state of ignorance, these three things are a potent combination, right? The context of, or the confidence to sell something that doesn't exist, and having gained that confidence by being part of an experiential process in my life doing consulting. The ignorance around the hardships around getting the product right. It's a very complex process, being ignorant on that front. And really the orthogonal nature of the dental economy. These three things were my driver in getting started. So I was not, governed by the wisdom of age or experience. I was more driven by the folly of youth. So that's the first bit right now. And everybody go through a kind of a confirmation bias, right? So my co-founder Mark believed that I could pull it off, right? For those 2 years. So it's really a very it's a bet. It's just a bet on the person that you're meeting, and you're driven by the gut, right? And then we got started building CareStack, right? And I was under this confirmation bias that technology would be all right. Let's do Mark times 10x. So which means let's go ahead and sell the product even before it's fully flushed out. So in those 3 years, I did door-to-door sales, and I was knocking on doors and signing account after account, probably hit around 200 customers. The first 200 customers in CareStack, I sold it, right? And we would do demos, take people through the workflows. Those places where features were not flushed out, those would be prototyped out. So you're basically building demand so that when the product is in, you can basically take customers live. And And then we launched the product in Mark's practice, and this entire thing was going into the drain. And you recognize that what got you started will not get you further along, and you understand the quirkiness of what a vertical market is all about. And you understand that your decision makers, who will probably be hustled out by the twinkle in the eye of the entrepreneur, are not the real users of the product. The users of the product hold an equally important position in maintaining retention and stability, referenceability, and consistency to your growth, right? So, and you recognize that those things are lacking on the product just by the first launch that we did in Mark's practice, right? And you see that, you probably need a couple of things. So that 3 years of selling on the ground, that got me exposed to a couple of things which is very unique to working in a fragmented industry, right? So in an industry like ours, you have the behemoths, basically the distribution companies running the show. Just a modern technology product would not be really good enough to move the needle, right? Because we get asked this question as to, hey, the rest of the guys will catch up to you at some time during the sales process. The first 200 that we sold, when you don't have a set of referenceable customers, this whole question keeps propping up, right? How are you going to really, manage this humongous process of change management, of moving people who have been on a single system to a modern system like CareStack, people who have been around on the same system for like 30 years, 25 years, 10, 15 years, right? It's a lot of change. And that got us thinking on, how should we look at ourselves? The more we looked at ourselves like a modern SaaS company, the less of a difference we were making, right? And we kept thinking, and what is it that, that's a good position for us to maintain, right? And we decided that, we have to really call ourselves as a doing more company, right? So when somebody hears the name CareStack, the very first thing that should hit their mind is to identify us like a business partner who is willing to do more than what they are willing to pay us for, right? So the doing more mindset became the brand promise. And that whole insight came from 2015 to 17, and my state of ignorance was dropping, and I was becoming a little bit more wiser once I got that bit right? So let me just take that single brand statement and kind of expand on it. What does doing more mean? It simply means the product you have should do more, okay? It should do more in terms of powerful features, sophistication, more in terms of intelligence, more in terms of providing support to the users, etc. What should the operations do? The operation should be doing more. Our operational people should be helping customers have a good experience around the brand. We should be truly worried about customer success post launching the product. We should be giving the frontline users comfort during the process of change management. So our operations has to do way more than what they're willing to pay us for. Now, once we got both these things correct, that influenced the way we started hiring, right? We stopped worrying about talent density, and we started looking for people who will work for us and who are willing to do more, right? So those 3 years of selling basically gave us these very unique learnings of calling us as the doing more company, translating that brand statement to the way the product evolved, right? Translating that brand statement to way the standard operating procedures around operations was set up, and finally going down to even making hires on people who are willing to do more, right? Now, Mark has been through this cathartic journey for 3 years, watching this pursuit of truth, right? And so the confidence was building up, right? So it's not like a very distant journey. I have your money, now go screw yourself, right? So that's not the intent, right? So someone is basically involved in the process with you, going through this whole process of rationalization, and then being vulnerable, and then going about deconstructing till you get it right. And so 2017, end of 2017, we launched into Mark's practice. Whole of 2018, we kind of perfected the product out. Because we oversold a product by way more customers than what we could, what the platform could really afford. 50% of those customers we sold in 2017 churned out. It never went into implementation.
Okay.
Right? You oversold, and then over 2018 you corrected all the kinks. By early 2019, the product was flushed out. Right? Ever since that, this philosophy of doing more basically gained a deeper strength, and it's really that doing more mindset and philosophy, and that brand promise that really gave us the roots to go against these behemoths in a very with full of conviction, and that's how we got customer love and referenceability and going from 0 to 1,000, right? So that's our nutshell.
Just to rewind a little bit, you mentioned door-to-door selling. So what you were actually doing is you would land up at a dentist practice, like a place, and then you would request for a meeting. Or can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, the first 200 customers were all outbound.
Okay. Okay.
So because, and that's not the way to build a company, right? So, but it took me 3 years to understand the nuances behind building a brand versus selling, right? The first 3 years was sales, outbound sales, right?
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at, whether it was outbound or inbound. So can you elaborate a little more on your outbound processes versus what you're doing now for your inbound, that is the brand management, how you're building your brand and things like that?
Absolutely. The first 2015 to end of 2017 was just doing trade shows, conventions, dental society meetings, meeting influencers in the space, building those networks and relationships. It was all outbound. I was probably traveling 10 months in a year on the road, right? So those 3 years was just, you're a bag carrying sales guy. You're not a product founder, right? You're meeting, working up, probably met 90% of the people out there in dental at least once, right? Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the first 3 years was all focused around an outbound sales process, which was centered around conferences and user society meetings, right? And those conversations kept adding to this insight that I was previously mentioning. So by end of 2017, the focus started shifting away from an outbound process. And once we found the brand statement of not branding CareStack as a modern SaaS company for dental, but as a business management, business solutions company, which does more for dentists than what they pay us for, that brand promise then translated into a demand generation strategy, where we started building all the levers of demand generation across, having an ad-based strategy on social platforms, a content-based strategy, which was largely delivered over webinars, podcast, and things like that. An influencer-based strategy around both online and offline. So dentist has a lot of Facebook groups, which have with the influencers who hold that group to create a influencer network. Brought those influencers into CareStack as advocates on our payroll, as affiliate partners. So you had an influencer-based strategy. Then you formed a referral-based strategy around extracting customers out of referenceable clients, a product-based partnership model, which we built around, very compatible companies in the dental space who were like product-led, and then finally building up office manager-based team, which started creating content, which started creating tools, checklists, which enables an office manager to have more time for themselves, right? So that once that whole wheel of demand generation was built and we staffed it up, now the sales process is completely inbound, right? So the demand generation basically turns, and across all these segments, we have demos that gets booked, that goes to a sales team, which is all inside sales team. And the sales team really has a process that they follow, a methodology that they follow. Our team is based, does sales. So we have a 14-member sales team today, inside sales team today, which is all structured and built around a process called as Sandler, which is the methodology that they follow, the way they qualify, the way they set up an upfront contract, way they do a negative reverse questioning to emphasize the pain, the way they close, way they maintain parity of power across the negotiation phase. It's all built around the Sandler principles. So that's kind of like the sales process. It's all inside sales based. And then we have a tool enablement, which ties demand generation and sales together on HubSpot with metrics tracking those deal flow across all of those stages. And so it's become a science. What used to be an art is really a science where we do around 350 demos a quarter. 350 demos a quarter across multiple customers, and we hit around 25% to 30% as our hit rate.
Okay, that's nice. Just to understand, like now with all the knowledge that you've gained, like sales versus marketing and things like that, how would you do it differently if given a choice today?
First and foremost, in vertical markets, you just don't sell things to more people. You need to have an accurate understanding of the end state experience post the launch, right? So, I would the rules of horizontal SaaS scaling doesn't apply in vertical markets. It's almost like a step jump. It's your rate of growth is not your real North Star metric week to week or month to month. Those things don't apply in markets like healthcare and things where there is heavy change management and fragmentation of customers. It's always going to be a step jump, right? The rule of thumb is to not sell something until your product market fit at an end user level is at least validated by 100 customers. Okay, so go slow. It took us 100 customers to perfect CareStack. It was not the first 10, not 20, because of the variances in the standard operating procedures and workflows that is followed inside offices. It took us 100 customers, right? Can you guys hear me?
It just broke. Could you just repeat yourself?
Hello? Yeah.
That last point broke.
Sure. Yeah. What I was trying to say is you don't go on to scale sales or demand generation till you get your 100 customers right. Okay. The time, right, till you get your 100 customers time right, though you're not spending on sales, that time is to be well spent on creating the brand. Okay. In our case, those 3 years of really perfecting the product, the time that you did on a lot of outbound sales, just tone it down and spend the time building the brand. And our brand is do more for our customers than what they pay us for, right? So you do activities which builds trust, right? Which is not directly tied to the software, but which essentially builds the brand. You create workbooks, you create content, you create tools which make their life easy in a pro bono manner and start contributing to the community, and you bring on the community effect till you're ready to take off, right? And then all the work that you've done on the community, that also allows you to engage, network, build this virality to the connections that you have, so that once the 100 customers come in and your product market fit is more streamlined, you have very less drop. By the way, our lifetime value on a customer is 15 years. Okay, once you are in, wow, you are in for life, wow, right? We haven't churned any customers in the last 2 years. 18 months to be exact, 0 churn, right? And so these are like high retention businesses, and your revenue expansion opportunities it's almost like we make like $8,000 on an office a year on a SaaS model, but your upsell offerings can take you all the way to $50,000 a year on an office, right? It's basically digitization of the entire stack of things that happens in an office, all the way from payroll to insurance billing to call center to services to electronic prescriptions to, you can just stack it. There's like some 24 things around which, you just take the wallet share out of everybody else who basically comes into an office, right? So that sales process and your product implementation process basically has to be flawless to make all these things happen. So that being said, don't sell before you're fully ready, right? Give it this length of time. These markets are going to stay there. Nobody's going to take it away from you. You know, the time till you gain that fit, build your brand, build that credibility of what you call yourself as, build the connections, the network, and contribute to the community on a pro bono basis that allows you to conduct the rest of your journey very smoothly once you have found the product market fit and then you're scaling fast. So that's what I would do. The third thing is I would basically put a lot of thought into hiring, right? So necessary, our early hires, when we took a lot of people out of dental into the software unit as we went through the process of creation. And in these markets, when you're truly seeking the truth and acting as a disruptor, probably having a lot of context is also not a good thing for the creation and the evolution of the org as a whole, right? So those time when you're not selling could have been spent a lot more better on culturally focusing on the kind of hires, writing the playbooks for the pieces of the org to all come together and guide it in the right direction. Those are the spots which I would do way differently.
Wouldn't it be hard, to just say like, okay, you build your product out, wait a little, like if you really want to go out, approach more customers, how do you manage that?
Yeah, see, so let me put it this way, right? So when we started selling, we had the case study of our first office basically offering us $1 million to get started, right? The problem is so intense that people would just resonate with it, right? And the kind of trade shows that you would do, finding 100 customers out of 200,000 customers is no problem, right? If you are outgoing, if you are present, and if your intent is more or less pointed in the right direction and you're articulate about the problem you're solving, in these kind of markets, getting someone to make an impulsive decision is easy, right? It's way more, it's not that difficult as you think you are. The problem is when you're walled up inside a glass cabin and then you think sales is automatically going to happen, it doesn't work, right? So finding customers without overselling your brand before it's ready is truly possible. And you can be more qualitative in terms of who you choose with, and you can be more transparent with them. You can create structures. Looking back, right, I would have really picked up smaller investments from probably 100 customers if we were to redo this again, so that you launch in your first 100 customers, you basically vest them inside in the process, just like we did with our first customer. I'll tell you a reason for that, right? So after having raised $60 million at a high valuation, recently we sent a note to 34 of our top customers, because we wanted a lot of offline touch points in the country around which we could do meetups. And we wanted viral connections, not just digitally, but offline as well, so that you can bring the online and offline world together. And our proposition to our customers was, hey, we are valued high, right? But would you guys all like to come and pick some nominal stocks in CareStack, for a price, with no special discounts or anything, right? For the price that we are in today. And so that you can be part of this journey and you've experienced the benefits of CareStack, and we can make it even better. Guess what? Right? So
we lost you
the
again.
Customer love.
We lost you exactly after you said guess what.
Guess what? I'm really sorry for this, but we missed a crucial point.
No worries. Yeah, all 34 customers said yes.
Wow.
Right? So the price of the company was not a deterrent. The product love exists, right? Because they've used it, they've seen the needle move. I'm pretty convinced that a similar conversation 6 years back would have gotten us all those guys to basically participate in the co-creation process, right? Finding the first customers can happen at many levels, right? You could go into a co-creation process from day one with a cohort of 20 customers, right? And sell to 20 at a time, sell the concept, sell the power of the idea, see if they'll put money on the table before it actually gets born. and then go about and sell once all those use cases are really, proving what you meant for it to be, right? You think it's not flushed out yet, you'll get more aware, you'll get more wiser. Pick a cohort of another 20 customers. Repeat this process until referenceability and data come and gives you confidence that your workflows are truly producing the metrics that matter to the business, right? So that's the goal. That should be the goal.
I would say this is what we learn as effectuation at Upekkha. Just what you said right now is exactly what we are taught at Upekkha. So
okay. It's very hard doing these things on the ground.
So Abhi, sorry to interrupt, but actually, have you read something called effectuation? Read about something called effectuation?
No,
I'll send you a link.
Yeah.
Whatever you said, right, is pretty much exactly the same thing. But most entrepreneurs who do well, recreate most of these things.
Yeah, see, I think I had my brush with this concept when running the consulting days, right? I have seen products get created on a paper and open up large federated environments for IP creation, with corporations really funding the whole process, and then letting that IP out to the broader base and having an incentive model that allows them to get a share for being the early customers. I've been through probably 3 or 4 of those sales cycles because I am the user experience designer building the prototypes up. So I was at the front end of the process. So it's nice to know that the whole thing had a name, right? I didn't know that before.
So a lot of the pieces that you spoke about, they actually have very interesting names and descriptions. And if you read it, you will realize that like whatever you did, it has a particular name, and might inspire you to do more of it. Because what happens lots of times, lots of founders feel sometimes that I did this, but I'm not sure. You were very emphatic, but lots of founders say I did this, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to others. It just turns out that actually expert entrepreneurs do exactly what you said.
I think there is a broader piece that I have seen as a pattern, right, in similar kinds of pursuits. I think that I for orthogonality against everything that you do in starting up, that's where you have to find the edge. How can you stay away from mainstream thinking and attention, right from the picking of idea to the way you execute, right? Be anything but mainstream, right? That gives you the fastest route towards crossing your milestones, right? So that eye for orthogonality is kind of what I have what we have knowingly or unknowingly found as our DNA within CareStack, right? All the way from building the product to finding the investors to capitalizing the company with a healthy mix of strategics and financial to reinvesting more on customers even at a stage when the company is getting mature, to how we are thinking about an end state to a bridge. We have an angle which is not something that we see in the markets, right? And I think it's almost become like a natural course now that for the way we were born and for the journey we have had so far.
Okay. I have one quick question on pricing for you. As founders, we typically worry about, okay, should I we tend to underprice. And at Upekkha, we've learned a lot about value-based pricing. I'm not too sure if you heard of that term. I would want to understand how you went about pricing.
We are the highest priced product in dental. We are 40% priced above legacy competition, and we pretty much we take the largest market share now on deals that we do. So what we do is we displace like 5-6 companies, right? The top 5 companies in dental are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years old in the industry. That's what we compete against, like a $40 billion publicly listed distribution business, right? Mm-hmm. And we are priced 30-40% more than the market. There's your pricing is kind of a very interesting thing, right? It's also a function of how you run your sales process. Qualification of pain is kind of seminal to understanding pricing, right? So look at a normal sales process, right? So you get a lead. Let's say you did demand generation well, you get a lead. You go in straight into the process where you talk to the customer, you try and wow the customer, you talk about the product, you talk about the solution, you show them the features, all the great things that it does, and customer tells you, hey, great, right? You have given more information to the customer than what they came to you for, and now you're at the complete mercy of the client or the prospect, right? What usually happens is, the next time you call, they start ghosting you, right? And you're then you chase. At some point, the customer picks up the phone, gets annoyed, and say that we'll look at it later. We just don't have time now. This is your usual sales process. The conversion rate basically varies, right? This is probably what 90% of the sales process. This is how it works in most places, right? So because you really don't have a process around qualification, right? And setting up an upfront contract with the client that allows you to have a parity of power in this twisted relationship called a sale. Sales is really a buyer to seller relationship. It's almost like a buyer to seller dance, and the seller has to perform for the buyer, right? That's the underlying. See, one of the things that I feel what SaaS has done to Indian startup systems and folks who run SaaS companies, it has taken the whole performance aspect of a sale away from people. You're no more worried about how to sell to ants and rabbits and deers and elephants and that kind of stuff, right? Which those playbooks already exist. It's way more easy. The performance aspect of how you need to sell gets overlooked, right? So you think about it as a skill to buy, which money can bring you great salespeople who know that stuff, and then put them through a playbook, and they follow they trust the process and results happen, which is great. But in startup companies, if the founders don't have the performance quality around it, the way your sales org evolves, the way your demand generation evolves, the way you set up pricing, all of that basically takes a backseat, and it takes a long time to correct it, right? And it takes a long time to formalize it, institutionalize it, and set it on the right path. So your pricing is a function of how well you have understood the sales process, right? So I'll just talk about two concepts and then go back to the pricing question and on how we basically came down to the pricing, right? All of our, and you have to follow a methodology. You have to pick something that works from the market, right? Either Sandler or a trust-based methodology, but something that allows you to perform to the buyer, right? So that you can size the buyer, and that intelligence can allow you to price your product that doesn't make you at the low end of the value chain, okay? So the two concepts that we picked out of a methodology like Sandler, the first one is called as an upfront contract, which means, the way you open a conversation with the customer always gives him the comfort saying that, hey, either of us can walk away after our first meeting, okay? You set up a set of outcomes that you want as part of the first meeting, but one of the outcomes is you're free to stop the meeting whenever you think we are not a good fit. In the first meeting, all that we are trying to do is to figure out, are we a good fit, right? And either of us are at the liberty to say no, and we'll remain friends, shake hands, and move on with life, right? Something of that sort, which is an upfront contract, right? The second bit, what we have done is the process of qualification has to go through a negative reverse questioning. And I'll explain it. So let's say you start engaging, right? You could basically start off under the assumption or the bias that, the customer has 5 to 6 different software systems. We are trying to change it with the modern technology. So you can talk all about the value. You can talk all about, the displacement that we bring to the table, the efficiencies that we create. You could do all of that, right? That's one way to do that, to sell your wares. Or you could just go back and simply ask negative reverse question and listen and take notes, okay? Which is what 99% of the people don't do. So instead of saying CareStack is the best product that can allow you to save money from buying 5, 6 different products on one single platform, you can have everything you want to. you could open up the same conversation saying that, hey, you seem to be on the same system for the last 10 plus years. And I'm pretty sure that, since you've used it for 10 years, there's very little reasons for you to dislike it. Otherwise, why would you use it for 10 years? So unless there's something that you want to tell me, right? At that point, the customer is going to reinforce and say that, no, I used it because I did not have any other alternative. And you can guide them by qualifying, by asking negative reverse questions, which uncovers the pain and reinforces their perception that they are in pain without you having to be vocal about it. And you pull out all the points. Okay, you pull out all the points. That process of qualification is so critical to getting and understanding the pricing. It's about listening, conducting the process of qualification in a negative reverse manner, where you are basically saying that, hey, you have no reason to change. This is going to be a short conversation. You have been on something for 15 years. Why would it? But there's something that got you curious about us. So just interested in knowing more about it, right? So why don't you tell me, if that's the note on which you start, right? So, and then you sequence it with many such questions, right? And you start uncovering the pain. So when we uncovered the pain, we figured out that even when we price the product 30-40% above the market, the total cost of operations, the total value that we serve to the customers is probably double than what we price. Okay, so that's how you should approach pricing. Maybe for the first 30-40 customers, you could basically go with the standard pricing, which is priced high till you discover this process, and you tweak this process, but you could give them some sort of an incentive for being the early beta folks, right? But when you are basically on a demand generation mode, you should price for value. You should price more, you should do more. Nothing beats that, right? In an industry like ours, where change management is so critical, the price is not the deterring factor. It's really the change management that comes as part of the implementation. We don't, in dental practices, people from Wall Street don't work. It's people from Main Street, right? It's $15 per hour our employees who have no incentive to do a single minute more work than what they're already used to, right? So the software and the support and the account management and the customer success all has to come back and give more time back to these people, whether it be the doctors or the staff. They should have more time to focus on patient care. They should have more time to go back to their home early, right? So take more money, but just give them back those things that are more relevant in their life, right? Uncovering that pain and delivering on that promise is your biggest driver towards finding optimal pricing. And if you don't price well, if you don't build the depth of pricing and you don't differentiate yourself on the pricing, you will have a product which dies a slow death.
Okay. Just a follow-up question. What would your ACV per customer be?
It starts at $8,000 a year.
Okay.
Per office.
Okay.
And you stack up the upsell services, it could go as high as $50,000 a year.
Per office.
Per office.
Okay. Okay.
High ACV.
Okay. Got it. And like I just read that you raised your last two big rounds in the last 3 years, like both about 20 million. I have a few questions around the funding. So the first question is, like, being vertical focused, like, was it an advantage or was it like a hindrance to, raising funds, and why?
Yeah. India doesn't have a lot of vertical SaaS companies, right, which are cross-border in nature. And vertical SaaS in the sense that in businesses like healthcare, businesses like financial services, where there's enterprise change management involved on the operational side, on frontline facing businesses, especially in the SMB phase, India doesn't have vertical SaaS companies, okay? And these categorizations, I've always found it to be very difficult to mentally align with, right? We don't think of ourselves as a vertical SaaS company. We make it, we stick to that term so that it makes us talk less with investors, that we don't have to sit and, talk for 15 minutes more, right? It's what they are used to. So you speak their language, and then during the course of the way, you kind of get across what you want to tell them, right? We are a infrastructure play for improving the healthcare delivery outcome and cost for the patient. That's the that drives us, right? The North Star metric in our mind is the patients that we bring onto the platform, right? The footprint just happens to be the practices, and you get paid for doing that, okay? Our North Star metric is really improving the health of the patient. We are getting into that phase of our growth, right? So you've started improving the practices, you have started improving the patients, now you're moving towards the payers. You're getting all the dots together so that CareStack serves to be that system, which when used in dental offices has a tight connection with the medical world, and which can eventually result in the health of the patient, right? This is the vision that we are driven by, right? Your choice of investors has to be really careful for a play like CareStack. It has to be like super careful. Our first $5 million was easy. It was a dozen folks who wired us money, and it was raised under 30 days, right? It was a dozen folks with one lead investor being my co-founder, Mark, and the first client, and, another 12 people that I did not meet until 2 years later. It was all sold on the phone, right? No questions asked, right? We did not even have a financial model plan, no shit, right? But they all understood the path, right, on how we should really build. They have been part of these vertical plays before. It's called as vertical SaaS right now because, that's kind of the verbiage, right? But at the very core, these businesses are all mission. They're not.
We lost you again.
I am so sorry. Where did you guys lose me?
At the very core.
Yeah, at the very core, these businesses are all mission dependent, right? Our mission is, our North Star metric has to be the patient, because that's what we work towards, right? But the path to get their capital is an essential part of the journey, right? And therefore, we have to show that we are gaining the footprint. So eventually we get there, right? So we get bracketed into this vertical SaaS terminology, okay? But essentially what I was trying to get is, if you don't get investors in your round to round, who understand your end state mission and who have somewhat of an alignment that you will get into that end state, and if you make those wrong picks there, you're toast in these kind of businesses, okay? In vertical SaaS businesses, right? Where you're not driven by weekly rate of growth based on an article written by Paul Graham, right? So that understanding at a high level, that space for negotiation, the kind of twists and turns and pivots and realizations that one would have in a journey of this nature, your investors have to really resonate with that, and more importantly, should be intelligent enough to get what you're saying without screwing your peace of mind. Okay, so that pick is important in vertical businesses, right? So that's my first point. Out in the first $5 million that we raised from private investors and from customer, that was no problem, right? Then we went into institutional round after round. In the institutional round, and I have to say this about Axel and Shaker, right? So Shaker was my first institutional investor, right? I probably talked to a dozen other venture investors in the space, right? And Shaker found me. I did not find Shaker. So he came down to Trivandrum and met, and he heard about this from somewhere. He had probably picked up stocks in Sanofi by then, and they had this thesis around vertical SaaS companies, and then he took a plunge into this whole thing along with us, right? So Shekhar was my first institutional investor, right? If Shekhar was not there, I would have been toast, right, in all subsequent rounds, right? Because when you're building something complex and you're really involved in the process of perfecting out, and you're failing, and it's very natural for people who are disconnected from your journey, who think of SaaS as vertical SaaS and horizontal SaaS, to think that the markets are not favorable, right, or come to the wrong kind of conclusions and leave you hanging in between, right? I have seen that happen to friends of ours and things like that, right? So your first institutional investor, we were so lucky, he came in with empathy for the entrepreneur, but beyond that, right, his understanding of the space, or his unlearning on the space, was pretty in sync with how our journey was happening, right? So hands down, your early set of angels, right, have to be like great guys who get that space, right, and who know what's the end state you're working towards. Your first institutional investors pretty much means everything in these kind of spaces, because typically the cycle it happens to be first 3 years you screw up, next 3 years you clean the shit that you created in the first 3 years, and then another 6 years you basically scale. So vertical SaaS companies are like a 12-year roller coaster, right? So your first institutional investor has to, that's the most difficult period, right? If you lose confidence there, it's going to be very difficult raising subsequent rounds, right? Vertical SaaS plays are also about getting your cap table right between a healthy mix of financial investors and strategic investors. Especially in fragmented markets, you need strategics to basically come and create deep distribution depth, right? And you don't need strategics controlling the course of the company. So the round has to be led by financial investors. You have to figure out techniques to keep the strategics under 10% ownership. So all those mathematics are involved, but you need to very carefully craft the cap table, and you should probably have like 5 or 6 strategics on the cap table who will eventually bid to acquire, right? And the value creation process you have to really work backwards, design the end state, and then start checking the boxes, right? These are the things that we did, right? The early set of angel investors, great, good, solid round, 5 million, and I had a choice in every round on a financial investor. So I would basically have 2 term sheets and I would pick one, right? And the North Star, the good thing that happened to us is Shekhar being the first institutional investor, right? And then being able to build out the strategic cap table in balance to the financials, and making sure that these folks are all managed very healthily, and everybody having the company's interest at its best. That's kind of what allowed us to basically go through this process.
Got it. How did you handle like your subsequent VC negotiations? Like, was Shekhar a big part of it, or? Look,
our rounds are like very rapid, quick, right? Okay. All rounds closed under 30, 40 days.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And you're, it's something that I think has been a pattern from our starting days. The first seed was closed. Shekhar made the decision the day he met me. Mm-hmm. And he called back and next day and said that we are in, right? Okay. The subsequent round I did, these decisions were all being made, right? Very, very quick thing. So there, in our case, there has not been negotiations. Believe it or not, I have not had, and we have been, so I have not gotten into that phase of negotiation yet, right? Okay. And all the investors, basically we get together on a common meeting point as to what is the value that should be set. And for some reason, the new guy basically gets there without a lot of work to do, right? So the negotiation bit has been alien to us. I kind of see that going around in a lot of cases, but we have not experienced it yet. Maybe we will.
Okay.
I'll tell you when we do.
Okay. Any tips for people trying to raise?
Which round? Seed, angel, institutional.
Maybe
Which round?
Seed or maybe a Series A. Series A.
Yeah, see, I have a complete
pre-series
anti.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is way easier to raise a lot of money when you don't have numbers to show, right?
Okay.
Raise enough on potential, right? So that you can get your arbitrage. So work on the work. So usually we follow a pattern of $500,000 on seed, metrics on some form of fraction on that 500,000. All these things which are non-consequential, right? Especially in early stage. So my 2 cents is, and treat this with a pinch of salt. I don't want to end up misguiding people either, but so please take all of this with a pinch of salt. Build something, and I can only talk for those businesses which takes a lot of time to create, right? So build something hard, right? It can take more time. It can be a 12, 15-year-old journey. Build something so hard so that's so hard to take it away from you, right? And build. Build for a large market. Build something deep which goes into the heart of the problem you're solving, right? Endure that pain so that you build something hard. And if you're building something real hard, right? Playbook is
Abhi, we lost you again.
We lost you again.
Can you guys hear me?
Now, yes.
Yeah, my connection is so unstable, guys. I'm very sorry, okay? So what I'm saying is build something like uber hard, okay? When you raise a seed round, when you don't have numbers, try and raise 3 to 5 million. If it's a large market and you're solving for a hard problem, raise a large enough seed, which basically takes you to the next leg, which allows you to have a meaningful before you can be in front of an investor the other time. Raising the small seeds, bootstrapping the company for too long, building the technology wrong, and redoing it, churning people and customers. These are all hassles you can if you basically raise a large enough seed. So, if you're not solving a hard enough problem, it's a very peripheral solution that you're trying to build horizontal. I am not the guy to provide any comments there because I just don't know those kind of businesses, right? In those businesses, if you're involved in, go full stack, go all the way down, build something hard that's very difficult to basically take you out of business, right? And raise a large seed, raise a very large seed round. Go orthogonal on it, right? So when you don't capitalize on that state that life gives you, right? Yeah.
Got it. I have 2 quick questions, and after that we can open it up for the audience to ask questions. Did you face any challenges, with respect to hiring and scaling?
Oh yeah,
Right.
hiring is kind of where we rebuilt the product 3 times. We building out of Kerala and replicating. So let me put it this way, right? Those 3 years till we found our brand statement. Right?
Abhi, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, we just lost you again.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
we got you.
Yeah,
we can hear
you.
Okay. So what I was saying is, till we found our brand statement, right? Our hiring has not been on the right spot.
Okay.
Okay. First 3 years, I wish we found the statement early on, right? That's one thing I wish. This thing dawned on us early on. The day we decided to call ourselves as a do more company, it had a cascading influence on how we hire, right? So, you know, for us to do more on the product and on the operations, we essentially need more hires who are willing to do more for the customers than what they think they should be paid for.
Got it.
Precisely, right? That clarity on the people strategy is so tied to the brand promise that you want to basically give. A brand promise, people confuse. Can you guys hear me?
Now, yes.
Now we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, a brand promise quite often gets confused as a line on a deck, on a corporate deck. It isn't. In a startup, the moment you say that I'm going to do more than what customers are willing to pay me for, it boils down to the people strategy, right? So the first 3.5 years as we built CareStack and till we found this thought and this statement, we have a lot of mistakes that we did around hiring, right? We have churned a lot of people in our early stages, both in India and in the US. We tried setting up engineering teams. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we tried setting up. Yeah, we tried setting up engineering teams in Boston, and we built like a 25-member team, which we shut down in less than 6 months. We hired people out of Microsoft, and a lot of these, we got swayed away by the theories of talent density, and we instead of connecting with the brand that we are building and what we need to stand for, we got swayed around by esoterical things that we thought would do wonders for us, and it's none of that, right? It's horses for the courses. What are you in terms of your brand to your end customers? If you say you want to do more, you want to do more on product and operations, and therefore the only way to do more on both these things is to have people who are willing to do more on both these items, and that became our core driver in the way we hired, right? So getting the hiring right in many ways is a function of your thought around what you want your brand to represent very clearly. It literally has to come down to a single statement.
Got it. Thanks. And my last question for today: any top 2 mistakes that you wish you can just share it with us and explain your learning so that we can learn from you? Like, don't do this. Something that you learned the hard way.
Yeah, I think I have already covered it, right?
That would be
vertical markets.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't oversell, right? These markets are very patient markets.
Got it.
Effectuation, right? So believe in the power of effect.
Okay.
Don't go to market early, right? So that's one thing, and then hire. The hiring mistakes are all tied to find your soul before you hire, right? So find what the soul of your product stands for, and it has a cascading impact on the people you hire, right? And those are the two mistakes and how we learned and recovered from it.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Abhi. I really enjoyed this session. I will open it up for questions now.
Hey guys, can I stop my video because I think it's kind of having an impact on the bandwidth.
Please go ahead. No worries.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Maybe I have one question.
Yeah.
So, Abhi, what was like a low point and how did you cross that? Because obviously, losing revenue for your first customer, working with them and going through that would have been super low. How did you keep yourself going through that?
See, I have gone through an existential crisis almost every year personally, to the fact that over time I've just become immune to pain, literally, right? In 2016, we had barely, a month or two left of payroll in the bank. And we had to raise money fast, and my In between the race, my mom passed away, and in an unexpected manner, a completely healthy person. So those are some of the most stifling things, at a personal level that I have, that you don't have a way out, right? I can talk to you about every year I have gone through something terrible of that nature. 2016 was that. 2019, I slipped into a coma and was in the ICU for like 4 weeks at a stretch in US in a hospital, in a near-death situation.
Wow.
And in 4 weeks, and by the end of 4 weeks, after 2 weeks, I came out of the ICU and got moved to the team. And the 6th week, we ended up raising the round, like exactly two weeks after coma, right? So all the investors came to see me at the office, and if you are basically at the very front end of the process, right? The markets don't really care a damn. The moment you have started running payrolls, the moment you are driven by the desire, and you build the critical mass of believers, you don't have an excuse, right? Absolutely, you don't have an excuse. Why should people give you the elements of doubt? If you simply take a step back and ask for that, why there's no, if you tell me benevolence, I don't think that virtue is to be found in this world quite a lot, right? So, you just don't have a reason to wish why people don't see the same thing that you don't see, right? And it's on you to perform for your people. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to, can you do it or can you get away with it, right? So these two questions literally drive all your path forward in a journey, right? So this would be one or two low points, right? But there's quite a few, right? On what it is. Your problems don't mean a damn thing to the markets. So get used to it. I keep telling folks at CareStack to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, be comfortable amongst discomfort, right? So once you carve it into your way of life, no shit matters.